Good evening, everybody. On behalf of Shri Vaishnav Vishwavidyalaya Indore and Shri Vaishnav Institute of Journalism and Mass Communication, I welcome you all. Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Upinder Dhar sir, Coordinator SBI JMC, Dr. Santosh Dhar ma'am, my colleagues, our guest Mukti ma'am, and all the participants, a hearty welcome to all of you. At a time like this, when we are stuck by a pandemic and cannot really physically go outside and meet our students, these webinars which are being conducted are a very good platform to reach out to our students or other people who are interested in learning and give them an opportunity to learn new things. I'm very thankful to our guests who agreed to be a part of this webinar, and we'll be speaking on a very interesting topic today, which is New Age journalism post COVID 19. We know that every industry, every workplace has been affected due to this pandemic, and it will be really helpful for the upcoming journalists to know about the challenges or maybe the other aspects that they will be facing once they will go into the outside world again, like we used to do earlier. So I would request Santosh Dhar ma'am to give the welcome speech. Ma'am.
Dr. Rupinder Bhatt, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Shri Vaishnav Vishwavidyalaya, Guest Speaker Mukti Masliya, Shivli Sarkar, Coordinator Webinar, and participants, a warm welcome to the webinar on New Age Journalism post-COVID-19. On the World Press Day, it was reminded that during crises like the COVID pandemic, newspapers are the primary source of cross-check information, consider opinions and critical analysis. Journalists are not allowed to let their imagination interfere with the plot while writing. And when the story is a pandemic, a disaster unfolding in mysterious ways in a society where authorities try to hide the facts and regulate the media, the job of a journalist becomes tougher. Asking uncomfortable questions, often mistaken as aggression, is one part of the job. More difficult is getting answers for them as the field work has become more risky. And even the friendliest of the official sources clamor. Reporters now venturing out have to guard themselves against not just the virus, but misinformation too. As a growing number of officials go anonymous or give divergent details, it becomes imperative for the reporters to cross-check information with multiple, mutually unconnected sources. Disaster reporting guidelines advise journalists to use the right terminology, the context in which things are said and done. But when there is official silence and inaction in the name of strategy, reporters run the risk of crossing the line that separates journalism and activism. The COVID 19 pandemic that has become a global health concern appears to have made work challenging even for journalists along with people in other professions. The pandemic has become a threat to the existence of a number of media houses. The head of a research team, Emily Bell, professor at Columbia University, Graduate School of Journalism, says that newsrooms have started facing economic, psychological, and other pressures because of COVID 19. This webinar, New Age Journalism Post COVID 19, is aimed to address to some of the challenges of New Age journalism. May I request Dr. Upinder to inaugurate the webinar by giving the opening remarks. Dr. Dhar.
At the outset, I would like to welcome our guest speaker, Madam Masi,
Thank you, sir.
all my colleagues. Well, these webinars have become order of the day now.
Yeah.
Now we are having a number of webinars every day, from morning to evening. So it has, in a way, become blessing in disguise. On one hand, COVID-19 has disrupted everything. It has disrupted businesses, it has disrupted various kinds of activities. All, you can say almost all professions have been disrupted. But at the same time, to a great extent, people have coped with it successfully. But COVID 19 has been, in a way, disaster also. Say, our journalists who have been in the field, many of them got the disease, got this COVID while were fighting against this virus. So journalists who have been on the field are also the warriors against this COVID-19. Well, as we can see that because of this COVID-19, which is likely to change everything after it is this pandemic is over. Where everything that comes, it also goes. So it's not a permanent phenomenon. But post COVID 19, it is many experts think that work workplace realities are going to be different. Workplace environment is going to be different. The way we will be working is likely to be different because we shall have to observe social distancing. We shall have to wear the masks and on and so forth. There may be lesser people on the in the office around us. Some people may start working from the home, which has already started in a way. So different kind of environment. Maybe there are certain new set of skills which are required for doing our job. Coming specifically to journalism, is it journalism has, like other professions, has also seen a number of ups and downs and number of changes have taken place in journalism. If we start historically from the print medium, it in the later part, so we have seen the electronic medium coming in, but electronic medium and print medium continued together. And then in the very recent past, social media has entered. And in other words, digitization has become very dominant channel during COVID-19. It has in a way accelerated digitization, and journalism cannot be an exception to that. Although digitization had begun earlier also, it had begun earlier, but then COVID-19 has accelerated this process, has become fast, has become swift. In the case of journalism also, lot of things are happening on the digital platform now. So how this is going to bring about the change in the journalism, or we can say mainstream journalism? You see, in the case of a print medium, in a newspaper, we used to have, even today we have detailed news. So one would be looking for detailed news, detailed reports in the print. But when it comes to digital medium, you do not have the detail. The readers do not prefer to have very the big articles and detailed reports. They want to have short messages. So perhaps short messages are going to be the order of the day during the time to come. So because of this COVID, certain major changes are likely to take place in the profession of journalism as well. So people will have to develop new skills to cope with the situation and see to it that we are able to do our work effectively as journalists. So with these words, I'm very happy to inaugurate the first webinar of our Institute of Journalism and Mass Communication. And I said first, so there have to be many more. So many more should follow. It should be a continuous process, whether we are on campus or off campus, but this process should continue. So I would once again like to welcome the guest speaker and wish everybody happy learning during this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Santosh ma'am and everybody for having me today. I'm really excited. It's also my first webinar to address to the students of journalism mass communication. Ironically, I take webinars on completely different topics like marketing and stuff like that. So, um,
Yeah, I'm really happy to have this kind of an opportunity where I get to like share some of my experiences about what I know about journalism and things like that. Um, each one of you who's sitting right here is, in a way, um, sad or feeling a little down, I'm sure. And we all know the reason. We have had several reasons in the last 2, 3 months to mourn, to be sorry, be regretful about several things. And I think one thing that's hanging over all of our heads right now is this recent um, death by this really beloved actor of all of us, Prashant Singh Rajput. And I want to start with that for two reasons, because um, I want to set that as a standard for this webinar today. Because if you look at Prashant Singh Rajput and why his death seems so personal and real to all of us, is because he elevated his work so much. His work, his persona, his personality, the things he did and the way he did them, he elevated his work so much that his passing feels so personal to us. And so I want to start with that note today, that this is the standard of work. This is the standard of work that anyone's personal loss feels personal to us. Anybody else's death feels like our own family member died. This is the level of work that we put in, and this is our standard. So I want to start with that today. At the same time, I want to congratulate each one of you guys. The thing is, if you're sitting here having a discussion about new age journalism post COVID 19, we all have survived in some way. We are all survivors. We all have survived, I don't know, a lot of mental stress. We have survived probably a lot of a lot of mental trauma that we've all gone through, and also physically. So congratulations that we're all survivors. Congratulations, all of you guys that you're here to hear this, because you're all survivors. And the fact that you want to learn this today and you're here is because you're here to fight. You're here to survive and fight uh, this global war. It's a war right now. It's like a war against all of us humans, war against materialism, war against a lot of things. So I think we're all here because we want to fight. We're fighters. I also want to congratulate all of you for choosing journalism and mass communication. I don't know what you were thinking. I don't know what drove you to this profession. I have no idea, because in India, the classical situation is that the parents will, most of the parents are inclined towards medical engineering. So you talk to a lot of engineers and they say that I became an engineer because my parents wanted. I became a doctor because my parents wanted. So everybody has this whole, set standards by somebody else, and they all follow that. I've not heard anybody saying that I became a journalist or I chose journalism because my parents wanted. It's a very rare. It's a very rare reason. So whatever you are thinking about choosing journalism and mass communication, I don't know what your reasons are. Congratulations. I'm glad you chose it. I'm really happy that you chose it, because you chose a profession that in a way has survived crisis. It is actually poised to thrive in crisis. As much as I hate to say that, the journalism is here because of crisis. The reason why I say this is because I am into a journalism like profession. I'm a content writer by profession. I do journalism occasionally. I write for some papers and magazines and newspapers occasionally. So in a way, I'm like a part-time journalist. But I started with a full-time as a full-time journalist. I was with the Times of India earlier, and so I've seen the life of a journalist. I've lived it, and I chose an allied profession. I call it an allied profession because when you say journalism, it's part of mass communication, and so I chose, I pursued journalism for a very long time, and then I switched into an allied profession, which in this case is content writing. And the reason why I say congratulations to you is because in the last 2 months, a lot of my friends unfortunately, were either losing the amount of work they were doing because their companies were cutting their salaries. So they were losing 20% of their salaries, 30%, 40% of their salaries. And so their work hours were also shrinking. And in these 2 last months, I'm sure you have also experienced in your Instagram feeds and Facebook and all of those social media channels that people have become, they have become something else. I've seen chefs. becoming, like really doing great. I mean, becoming taking chef as a profession. I've seen people learning musical instruments, creating more music. I have learned. I've seen people starting their own podcasts and YouTube channels. I've seen people become painters, and so a lot of creativity I saw in those last 4 months, and I was really jealous of all of my friends because not because they were losing their jobs and salaries, but also because they had so much time. They had a lot of time to pursue all of these skills and become this extra person. I didn't have time. I was I was very busy in the last 2 weeks. And I envied their freedom because I was like, wow, on a weekday you can cook all these things and show on social media, and I can't do that because I'm still working. So yes, I lost a lot of my clients when the first lockdown happened in India. I lost a lot of um, uh, clients who were physically, out. Their businesses were physical businesses. They depended on a normal period of time income. They were able to stay afloat when the world was normal, but the moment the world became uncertain, they lost their grounds, and so I lost some clients. I was writing for two famous cafes in Delhi, Cafe Week and Cafe Bronze Onion, so I lost them. I was writing for a couple of e-commerce companies, and so I lost those clients. So what was keeping me busy if I lost my clients? The thing is, new clients came in, and I was,
Hello, ma'am. I'm really sorry to interrupt. Just one second. I'll
yeah,
request everybody else to put their mic on mute. I'm getting some comments that there are background noises, so I think that's because we are not on mute. I'll also mute my mic. And ma'am, just you keep your mic on.
okay,
Okay,
sounds
thank
good.
you. Please, ma'am, continue.
So, what was keeping me busy if I lost my clients is because I had a lot of new bunch of clients. And I'll tell you, I'll list down the companies, and this will form a basis of what the gist of my talk today is. Um, I started writing for edutech companies. Those edutech companies, education technology companies, contacted me for their writing and for their videos and stuff like that. I started writing for them. I was writing for sustainable tourism practices companies. I was writing for cloud accounting firm. I was writing for a digital marketing company, and of course, I was working alongside my own brother. He's a post production guy. He has a video production company, and I'm a co-founder in his company. It's called AVM Pictures. And I don't know if you've seen the very first Indore lockdown video that became viral in Indore, because we had those drone shots of Indore, and we produced that video. We were out in the field and we were shooting how Indore looks in the lockdown and how people have followed the lockdown rules. So we were actually creating that video as well. So all these things were keeping me busy. Another thing that was keeping me busy was I thought, okay, in these 2 months when I'm writing for a brand new fields of industries, I was also engaged very actively in something called self branding. I will tell you about self branding in the other part of the talk right now, but I'm just listing out the things that were keeping me busy. So self branding was something I was really engaged in. I got myself published in some very major publications I've been wanting to do. One of them being Thought Catalog. It's a very respectable digital magazine. So I got myself published there. I've been trying for 2 years, and I finally did it. And there was a Notion Press. Notion Press is a very famous publishing house, and they selected one of my poems to publish in their anthology. So that was again something that worked out during the lockdown period. And all of these things, I'm listing down these things not as my achievements, but I'm listing down these things as various points of assurances that when you chose journalism and mass communication, I want to tell you guys, you chose well. You did a good job choosing that. Whatever your reasons for choosing that was, I don't know, but I'm glad you chose that. It's because today, when we are discussing about new age journalism post COVID-19, you will realize why this choice has today become so crucial. It's probably one of the most crucial career choices ever. So, congratulations on that. I'll start with saying, what is new age journalism? when we want to discuss about post-COVID-19 era, and we want to talk about New Age journalism, what really is a New Age journalism? And I want to I've thought a lot about it. I've been thinking about it a lot because last year I had the pleasure of taking a workshop on a very challenging topic. It said, and they challenged me with that topic. They said, if newspapers are dying, how will the journalists survive? So I took that seminar, and it was from that time. I took that seminar in October 2019, and ever since I've been exploring what really New Age journalism is all about. Really, why people are using this term so much, why New Age journalism is being talked about so much, what has given birth to it, and all of those things. So I finally, succeeded in devising a very simple definition of New Age journalism. And here's how I want to define it. I wrote it down for you today. And according to me, New Age journalism, a journalism that is medium neutral, which is a platform neutral, and that focuses on telling stories, is called New Age journalism. So for me, two things stand out in New Age journalism. One, it is platform and medium neutral, and two, it is focused on telling stories. I'll give you several examples of this. You may agree with me, you may disagree with me, but just be with me as I share with you these examples. I'm sure we all follow this page called Humans of Bombay. It's called Official Humans of Bombay on Instagram. It has a huge Facebook following as well. So Humans of Bombay was originally actually Humans of New York. And if you're following Bombay page, I'm sure you may also be following Humans of New York page. And this began in 2015. And if you look at the story of this, the foundation of Humans of New York, you'll realize actually it is founded in journalism. So there's this guy called Brandon Stanton. He's some kind of an accountant or some back office executive. I don't exactly know his profession, but I do know that he's the founder of Humans of New York. And this guy loses his job. He was happily having this job in Georgia, and on the weekends he would pick up his DSLR camera, and he would on the weekends he would just shoot pictures of people doing things, and he would just publish it on his social media pages. Nothing serious. He was just like a photographer as a hobby. Nothing serious. And he loses his job. So he says, okay, since he wasn't getting more jobs in Georgia, he thought, okay, I will move to New York. And while I apply to various to various companies of his field and profession, he will photograph at least 10,000 people in New York. And he will photograph one person every day. And he's going to do that for 10,000 days. Regardless of whether he gets a job in New York or not, he's going to do that. So that was his goal. He just decided, I like shooting, so I'm going to just take photographs of people. So when he started taking the photograph of the first subject, when he started, it was somewhere in Central Park, and he was in New York, and he asked this very old man and said that, listen, I want to photograph you. And this old man started telling his story. Apart from photographing, he just sat with Brandon Stanton, and he says he just told him how he came to New York and why he came to New York. So Brandon Stanton said, do you mind if I record you saying this story? And this old man agreed, and so he recorded that story, and then he published on his Facebook page not only the photograph of that old man, but also the whole story behind why he came to New York, what were his struggles, how was his life in New York, how did he survive the competition in New York, and things like that. And he named his album called Humans of New York. Eventually, Brandon Stanton created a whole Facebook page called Humans of New York. Then it came to Instagram. I'm talking about 2015-16. And then guess what? A lot of celebrities started following that page. And so somebody recommended him to the United Nations. United Nations called Brandon Stanton to cover war stories. And so Brandon, this founder of Humans of New York page, was called as a photojournalist by United Nations to cover stories of war zones in order to spread peace. And so he went to war zones such as Syria, Afghanistan, and all these places. And he started reporting good stories. He started reporting human stories. And so Humans of New York page became international. And then there were stories from Syria, from Afghanistan, from war-torn nations. The crux of this story and the bottom line of this story is this journalism of Brandon Stanton was born from crisis. His crisis was he lost the job. And so he decided to tell stories of other people. Today, he has two best-selling New York Times charts best-selling books, which were created out of Humans of New York. He has books that were written about the people suffering in Syria and other war-torn states and nations. Today, he's respected as a journalist. He didn't start off as a journalist, but he started off as a storyteller, and so today he's a respected journalist. He's won several awards today. And not only that, this one person started a revolution. Now you have Humans of Chicago, Humans of Bombay, Humans of all these cities. Why? Because this one guy, Brandon Stanton, decided to tell stories of New York. So this is the revolution he started, and it was born out of crisis. So one takeaway from this story is journalism is born out of crisis. Crisis is actually the root cause of journalism, and you will see why as I quote more examples. Another thing, there's this, I don't know if you've ever heard this name. Her name is Jannah Jihad. Jannah Jihad is a 12-year-old girl in Palestine. Again, a war-torn nation. We all know the ongoing wars between Palestine and Israel. We all know what's happening there. We've all read something about it. Jannah Jihad is a 12-year-old journalist, world's youngest journalist to have a press card. She has an official press card, and this girl is 12 years old. And how she became a journalist. She realized that in Palestine, the papers were not talking about the kids who were dying, the small children who were dying. Papers were hiding that. Newspapers were hiding stories of children dying because of war. And Jannah Jihad lost her own classmate to war. Her own classmate, back then 10-year-old small boy, he was killed in firing. And no local newspaper reported it. No national newspaper, no CNN, nobody reported that a 10-year-old boy has died because of war. Jannah Jihad borrowed somebody's webcam, some kind of a camera. I don't know what that camera is called, but she borrowed a camera and she started reporting from the border, where she would make a video of herself speaking as the firing is going on in the background. And she started reporting. She started making videos from that war zone. Local newspapers picked up that report and they started, they invited Jannah Jihad into their board, and the local channels became active. So local YouTube channels became active, and Jannah Jihad was called on those channels to show her videos and show her reporting. To the extent that Palestinian government gave her an official press card, and now she's officially allowed to go into the war zone, interview soldiers, interview people, and stuff like that. This is Jannah Jihad. Again, the root cause of her journalism was crisis. She saw injustice, she saw crisis. She realized nobody was reporting it, nobody was talking about it, and so she became a journalist herself. Remember her name, Jannah Jihad. She's a 12-year-old journalist, the youngest in the world. Now recall all the news items that you've seen in the last 2 months. As Santosh ma'am was talking about, there has been one reporting of disaster, and there's something called disaster journalism, where news reports were reported insensitively. We all saw the way news items have been reported. We saw journalists losing it on the field, losing their language, losing their protocols, and they are reporting anything. There's been chaos. We all have seen chaos in the last 2 months. But then, if we focus too much on chaos, we miss out on some amazing stories, some amazing news coverage that has happened in the last 2 months. As I talk about this, I want you to go through in your mind, think about all the news items that have stood out in your minds. And there'll be some names that will come to mind. You'll probably recall Shweta Singh reporting for Aaj Tak. And she's reporting from bus terminus of Delhi. And she's reporting amid those crowds. She's risking her life. She's amid the crowd. She's lost her mask at some points. And she's reporting that all these migrant workers, they are waiting for the buses to leave. Recall Barkha Dutt. She's been on the road for 80 days now. She has literally in her car, in a very normal car with her crew, she has practically been herself a TV channel in the last 2 months. The stories that she has brought of migrant workers, they have made difference. Because of her stories, people reached out, NGOs reached out and helped a lot of lakhs of migrant workers. She was also the first one to report about Sonu Sood, that Sonu Sood was sending migrant workers, in buses and all of those things. So Barkha, that's reporting. Think about Faye D'Souza. Faye D'Souza has had her own set of journalism, a very authentic journalism. She is not dependent on any platform. She does her own journalism and it's authentic. People believe it. And Faye D'Souza was doing her own part in all these 2 months of reporting. Then there's Dhruv Rathi. People like Dhruv Rathi, who are news analysts today. Dhruv Rathi is a very young guy. He's in his 20s. And he gives in-depth news analysis. If you open any TV news channel today, all you do is news is about debate. They'll call all kinds of people. They'll call all kinds of people, and you'll see screen of like 6 people on the screen and fighting, shouting, and you can't hear anything. That's what news channels are serving us today. And so Dhruv Rathi, what he does is he does a proper in-depth analysis. You want to hear a good news analysis, you go to his channel on YouTube. That's Dhruv Rathi doing his own kind of journalism. So I want to tell you that New Age journalism already was spearheaded. Humans of New York started in 2015. Jannah Jihad started her reporting in 2018. Faye D'Souza, Barkha Dutt, Shweta Singh have been doing this for many years now. New Age journalism was already spearheaded. We were probably too busy to notice it. Or some of us already noticed that this is New Age journalism. It has arrived. So I want to tell you, New Age journalism did not arrive due to COVID-19 or after COVID-19. It already existed. New Age journalism just became mainstream because of COVID-19. So that's one thing that I want you guys to understand. New Age journalism was already spearheaded. Another very important fact about New Age journalism, it was not spearheaded by an organization. It was not spearheaded by a news channel, by a newspaper, by any media house. New Age journalism was spearheaded by people like you and I. It was spearheaded by journalists like you and I. And I say you and I is because if you look at Jannah Jihad, she's not even a student of journalism. She's just a person. Brandon Stanton never studied journalism. He never studied photojournalism, but he just became one. And so this is what happens when there's so much chaos, when newspapers and we say fourth pillar of democracy, when they fail to do what they're supposed to do, individuals will stand up and say, we're going to do this better than you. And you will see how we do it. And so New Age journalism was spearheaded by people, common people like you and I. Now, do you understand why I congratulated you in the beginning of the session? That well done, guys. Well done that you did it. It's because of this reason. You have so much scope. We all have so much scope. If we have certain amount of sensitivity, some common sense, we can actually be part of this New Age journalism and change the face of media. New Age journalism is changing the face of media because the old media, the traditional media is forgetting what they were supposed to do. And so this New Age journalism is paving that path. Of course, there are good and bad people in every profession. And I'm not saying New Age journalism is pure. It's 100% pure. I'm not saying that. But then there are good and bad people in every industry, in every profession. So don't get upset by bad news. Look at the good news, good reporting, and let that be your example to follow. You can always choose to follow the example that you want to follow. So that is New Age journalism for you. I'm sure some of you are thinking, so what happens to the authenticity of the news then? If everybody becomes a journalist, everybody has a news channel, then what is the authenticity? Now, I want to tell you that there is a way to measure authenticity. Always when you talk about authenticity of news on any news, let's not forget something very crucial. It's called context. Context of news, context of authenticity. Now, if you look at the Humans of New York page, Why was it so authentic? What was the source? The source were the very people whose stories were told. And so it was authentic because the old man, suppose if he was photographing me, I gave him the permission to photograph me. I gave him the permission to share my story. So I am an authentic person, and I gave that authenticity to the page called Humans of New York. So when it comes to good news, when it comes to news that uplifts you, when it comes to news that is positive, you can always find authentic sources among people. When it comes to bad news in the sense crisis, disaster, frauds, for that, you will always have to rely on authentic, traditional sources of information. Because you don't want to believe anything which is coming from anywhere, especially news of fraud, especially news of embezzlement of funds, financial frauds, political frauds, scandals. You don't want to believe everything, obviously. In that case, the news still depends on the traditional sources of information. And so we already have a bifurcation. You have a news which is a feel good news for which you just need some bunch of people to validate it. You have some news which is bad news. In that case, you still have official sources of information from the government, from non government agencies, and you can always cross check the validation of that kind of news. So, authenticity really is not a problem. The question is, do you want to report authentically or not? It's a question of choice. It's a question of choice. All the names that I took today, all of these people, Faye D'Souza, Jannah Jihad, Barkha Dutt, Dhruv Rathi. I don't know if you've ever heard of CNN correspondent called Christiane Amanor. Christiane Amanor actually has been like the pillar of journalism. They say that she's the pillar of journalists for global media. And she was the first woman to report from a war zone in the world. She was the first woman in the world to report from the war zone. So she's also one of those people who have established authenticity. I remember if you remember the seminar that we all had, and I had done a physical seminar in your college, if you remember that, and there was a gentle lady from BBC, Sarika Singh. उनसे मैं बात करी थी during lunch at Vaishnav campus only once. And I was asking her, so how does BBC retain the authenticity of the news? Why does BBC office don't get attacked, for reporting the truth? Because the governments around the world have tried to, suppress news. Any news that is against the government, every government in the world has tried to suppress it. So what is your standard? So Sarika ji told me a very interesting thing. She said, BBC is not funded by commercial and government organizations. BBC is funded by independent bodies. And as a result, they don't have vested interests. These are all bodies, maybe journalists, they're educationists, all these people fund the BBC. As a result, the government never has any funding in the BBC, or companies that are funding the government don't have any stakes in BBC. And so BBC can act independently. She gave me example of Pakistan. Once BBC reporter spoke something against the Pakistani government at the moment, and the BBC office was actually attacked. So she said, so I said, then what happens? Then journalists will lose their jobs. What happens? So she said, no, journalists don't lose their jobs in BBC because, one, we are not funded by companies or organizations. We are funded by independent bodies. We're also funded by individuals. And as a result, our standard is, if the government does not let us speak the truth, we will stall services. We will not report for 10, 15 days, but we will not speak a lie. This is our standard. So BBC has set the standard, and these standards still are valid today. Some of the traditional media has retained that kind of standard. Now you'll see, okay, how many BBCs are there in the world? How many such good journalism, how much of good journalism really exists? I want to give you an example of The Wire. The Wire is an independent organization by media professionals. They are crowdfunded. So crowdfunding is another new age sort of investments in the media houses. And because of crowdfunding, what happens is nobody owns one particular media house. A lot of people own that. As a result, it gives the journalists so much independence to speak the truth. They are not under any pressure and they can speak the truth. The Wire has already begun. There's also The Ken. I don't know if you've heard of this paper called The Ken. The Wire and The Ken are also subscription-based independent digital newspapers. And they're all funded by crowd. crowdfunded, and they have independent media professionals working. So this is another example of new age journalism where they understand that the only time the truth will be suppressed is when you take money from government, you take money from companies, you take money from various organizations. That's where there's a good possibility the truth will be suppressed. Eliminate that investment. So who invests? People invest, readers invest. So Wire invites donations from crowdfunding pe chalta hai pura. Media professionals, also established media professionals, they have several other assignments, but they also work for the Wire. So this is how it all works, and this is how the new age journalism investment is spearheaded already in our country. So there's still so much scope of good journalism. On that note, I want to share with you what is the weight of good journalism, why good journalism matters, why good journalism one exists and it matters. I don't know if you've ever heard of this person called Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein is no more. He used to be a financial advisor in several companies, and he was a rich man. And I don't know if you've seen the latest episode of Hassan Minhaj on Hassan Minhaj has a beautiful show on Netflix called The Patriot Act. And believe me, you will learn more news and more analysis in that show than any other news channel. I assure you that show will open your eyes to what really journalism should be. So when I recommend The Patriot Act on Netflix, all of us should see it regardless of our age groups or professions, or I don't know how many people are attending this, established journalists or content writers or students. Everybody should watch The Patriot Act by Hassan Minhaj. And Hassan Minhaj was sharing that the beauty of journalism, the beauty of local news. The whole show was all about that the real news in America is really local news, because CNN and all these big channels don't report about smaller cities, and so all the smaller news gets into the local newspapers and local news channels, and how local news has played a very crucial role in exposing high-profile sex offenders in America. One of such offenders was this person called Jeffrey Epstein. He was into he had a huge prostitution racket. So he had two images. One, he had a public image where he was this financial advisor, respected. He was invited in seminars to speak about finances and stuff like that. So this was his public image. Privately, he was actually running a prostitution racket. And the news was broken by a local journalist. Her name was Julie K. Brown. So she was a local journalist in Florida, in a local newspaper in Florida. And she broke the news about Jeffrey Epstein running a prostitution racket. And her investigation was so thorough. That when Jeffrey Epstein was convicted in a court of law, the attorney used her investigation and quoted her saying, "It's the most authentic investigation I have seen in a very long time." This is rare, but this happened. A good investigation by a journalist was quoted in a court of law in America. This is the victory of good journalism. This is the weight of good journalism. And this also takes us to another important lesson, that local news is important. There's so much scope in local news. In the last 2 months, I have to admit, I am reading more local newspapers. It's because none of these channels, with all their debates that are going on, they don't talk about my city so much. And I want to know what is happening to my city. How many people have unfortunately they've died, or how many people have been rescued from COVID-19. I want to know about my city. And so for the last 2 months, I've been reading local newspapers so much. Local is the new age journalism, guys. Local newspapers are also spearheading a revolution. And of course, they have been suppressed by people. Media houses don't want to, or big investors don't want to invest on local papers. And so, of course, they're fighting a war, but they are surviving, and we all look towards local news today. So as long as the relevance of local news is going to exist, new age journalism is going to survive. So that's a very important thing that I want to tell you. So what should you do, really? You know now what new age journalism is. You know now that you chose the right profession. How to make the best use of this? How would you survive in a COVID-19 era? This is a very important aspect of this particular talk, and I came here to tell you this because I'm sure you being that generation, if most of you are in the generation Z, you guys are more informed than I am when it comes to new age journalism. I'm pretty sure about that. The names that I took today, you already know about them. I'm sure you're following their pages, you're already reading the news items. I'm pretty sure about that. I came here to tell you how we can survive as journalists. I came here to tell you how COVID-19 should not affect our work, how COVID-19 has not affected my work. I'm still getting work. I'm still busy. I told you that I missed out on cooking and painting and all these things because I was busy. I had so much work. So I call it something called journalism allied professions. One, it's very important that as students of journalism, and some of you who are already established journalists who are attending this webinar, and some of you who are professors of journalism, some of you who are teaching journalism and mass communication, it's important to understand that once you're a journalist and you learn what journalism is all about, you inculcate skills of journalism, you become so relevant in so many different allied professions. I realized that recently because, as I said, I'm really a part-time journalist. I major part of my income actually depends on content writing and not journalism. But I could not achieve any of those things that I did in the last 2 months if I were not a journalist. Because all those qualities of a journalist helped me thrive in this COVID-19 crisis. The qualities of journalism helped me survive financially and survive professionally in the last 2 months. And I'm very confident now that I've, passed that lockdown period now. I'm very confident that people like you and I are going to survive in the next many years because professionally, we have a lot of scope. So there's something called journalism allied professions. And I'll just list down to you. I'm sure you're already aware of these things, but I'll just give you a brief of that. There's something called allied professions in journalism, and they are related to mass communication. So there's public relations, there is advertising, there's marketing, there is influencer marketing, even acting and comedy. They're all under part of this one huge umbrella called mass communication. And so there's so many things. So there's writing, PR, advertising, marketing, influencer marketing, comedy, acting, script writing, screenplay writing, photography, cinematography. There are so many different things that are attached with mass communication. These are allied professions. How do you survive with all of these things? I'm sure some of you have inclinations. Some of you want to be a paper journalist. Some of you want to join a media channel. Some of you want to become social media journalists. So say you want to join independent YouTube channels, say. I'm sure you have your own, ambitions. Some of you have inclinations more towards, say, writing. Some of you want to become photojournalists. Some of you think you're better at marketing. You are really better at handling social media marketing. So I'm sure you all have your own set of niches, and I'm sure you're thinking in that direction at some point. The question is, how do you survive? How do you survive when businesses around you are losing money? When economy is failing, and when you think that, okay, even if I get a job, how will I get my salary? All these questions are around us. How do you survive that? I want to start with saying, do you have a portfolio? Think about the word portfolio. Do you have a portfolio? Have you bothered to build a portfolio? If you already have a portfolio, what kind of work have you put in that portfolio? The reason why I had work despite economy failing and lockdown is because I spent a lot of time building my portfolio in the last few years. And believe me, I've been in the profession for the last 14 years now, content writing, 10 years, freelance writing. My portfolio, I started working on the portfolio in the last 5 years, I think, only last 5 years. And that 5 years of portfolio building, that meticulous building of the portfolio has actually got me work despite COVID-19. My portfolio became my marketing, my qualification, my resume, my CV. All of us, regardless of our degrees or jobs or something, we paid so much attention to our CV and our resume. Very few people really think about portfolio. And this should actually, your journalism life, you as a student of journalism mass communication, you should start with portfolio. You should have a portfolio of your work. Have you started reporting? Have you started writing? Have you started marketing? If you've not started, it's time to do that. And so the very first step to survive any crisis, not just COVID-19, any crisis, build credibility, build your portfolio. In today's world, when we're talking about authenticity of the news, credibility is everything. Why would anybody believe you? I told you that new age journalism was spearheaded by people with credibility, people with portfolio. Brandon Stanton, he had a portfolio of photographs. Barkha Dutt, portfolio of great work. Faye D'Souza, Dhruv Rathi, Janna Jihad, portfolio of good, authentic work. So today, new age journalism needs authentic people. That starts with your portfolio. Build authentic portfolio. How do you do that? How do we really do that? It's time to evaluate what really drives you. What drives you, really? If you are already a journalist or you want to be one, if you are in a journalism allied profession like content writing or public relations or advertising, what drives you? What is that one thing that you find very interesting to do? That is the area where you start building your work. That is the area where you start building your portfolio. Find that out. So first start, build a body of work. A body of work meaning what interests you related to journalism or allied profession. Get work from there. How do you get that? I'll give you a small example. I can only give you example of writing and photography. If you're a photographer, you need probably a good portfolio of photographs clicked by you, showcased online on some platform. That platform could be your own Facebook or Instagram page. That platform could be another digital magazine that publishes photographs for free and it has your name on it, things like that. If you're a writer, start contributing. Today, there is no limitation of language, of medium, of area where you live in. You can contribute anywhere. Start writing, start reporting, whatever you're doing, start to submit that work that you're doing to various publications. Just Google publications that take journalists or publications that allow guest columns. Same with photographers, same with other people, PR advertising. Take publications that showcase your work and start building that portfolio, start submitting your work into those publications. This is first step. You will get rejected, of course. I told you that I got selected in Thought Catalog and Notion Press selected my poetry for. These are triumphs. These are victories. Behind that, 8 publications said no to me. Forbes India, I'm still trying to get published in Forbes India, believe me. Forbes India's editors keeps telling me, Mukti, next time. Mukti, not good enough. Huffington Post, another of my dream platform. I'm still trying to get published there. So I'm still getting there, after, just before all the success and victories that you see about me, there are some 8 to 9 rejections. So when you start submitting your work, you'll get rejected. And here's the good thing about rejection. It makes you evaluate where you're going wrong. It makes you evaluate, what is my weakness? What am I doing wrong? This will help you improve your craft, which is the next important thing. Improve your craft. Make your craft so good. Make your craft so good that you don't have to go asking for work. The work will come to you. And so build your portfolio, showcase your portfolio, and build your craft. Keep working on your craft. Keep improving. Don't spend so much time wasting on TikTok or any of those things. Use that creatively. You have hundreds, you name it. You have so many platforms to showcase your creativity. Use those platforms creatively and build your portfolio of work. Don't forget authenticity. When you do something, make it original. Make it as far as fact-based. Always keep the facts right. Keep your language right. Everything, make it authentic. Make it credible. and that will be a beautiful body of your work. So that's something that you need to explore. You can do anything. You can have a podcast, a YouTube channel, I don't know, start your own news channel, start working on the YouTube channel that your college already has. Have you reported there? Have you submitted any stories there? Have you brought stories of lockdown to your YouTube channel on your college? If you've not done that, please do that. This is another way to build your portfolio. I want to share with you a writing hack that I used to do, and this is the way I used to get work. If this helps you create your own hack, I'll be really happy. Here's what I used to do. When I started freelancing, I freshly just left Times of India. And when you leave a media house such as Times of India, जैसे आप करण जौहर का प्रोडक्शन छोड़ते हो, तो करण जौहर पे कोई शक नहीं करता, आप पे करता है कि आप में टैलेंट कम. That is, that's called credibility. So when I left Times of India, everyone was thinking that you must be incompetent, or you must be a failure, or everybody was basically doubting my own this thing. So I was furious. I was like, bro, I left on my own accord. I wanted to become a freelance writer, and so I left Times of India. Because in journalism, I realized I like writing more than journalism, and so I left it. So when I was searching, I was desperate to get jobs, and I was desperately searching for jobs. Here's what I did. I used to read papers like mad back then, and I would pick up English papers and Hindi papers, and I'll find advertisements. I'll find ads in them, and in those ads, I'll find errors. And if there were any grammatical errors in that, I will call up that advertiser saying, "आपने जो paper में आज full page का ad छापा है, उसमें ये grammar में error है. So you should hire me, because I know I spotted the error in the published papers." And so, of course, 3 out of 5 people will say, "We'll think about it." 2 people will bite the bait. And those 2 people will say, "Yes, Mukti, we need your help. This is how I got work." And even today, I practice that. I want to tell all the journalists here, or anybody who's into already in that profession, wondering how to get jobs, how to get more assignments. Explore your LinkedIn profile. Add levels, CEO, CTO levels people in your LinkedIn accounts. Send friend requests or LinkedIn requests to people who are CTO, CEO, who are in the decision making positions in companies. Pitch them your work to them. Study their websites. Study their digital magazines. They may have scope for you. Find that scope and then text them, then message them, then mail them. Tell them, "Sir, this is what I found out about your company, your digital magazine. I think I can contribute like this." This is one of the best hacks to get more work. That's because people who are at the level of CTO, CEO, etc., they, or even editors, all the editors, chief editors, all of these people, they're always looking for proactive people. They're looking for proactive journalists, proactive writers, proactive photographers, proactive advertising professionals. They're always looking for proactive people. When you do something like that, when you already study their paper, their magazine, their company website, and you find something to work about, they appreciate that. And as I said, initially my success rate used to be like 2 on 5 people will hire me. Now my success rate is like 4 on 5 people. 4 people actually offer me jobs. 4 people offer me contracts, freelancing contracts, etc. So do that. This is the biggest hack that I've learned in my career, and I want to share with you. Go ahead and talk to editors. Go ahead, study your dream paper, study your dream channel, study your dream editors. I'm sure they'll have work for you, because once you find out the scope, they'll be happy to hire you. So that's one thing I want you guys to go today and try. Stop living by the checks. All of you guys who are right now sitting here, who have established jobs, who have established freelancers or journalists, stop living by the checks. Create your own credibility. Your credibility will pay your checks in future. Don't just be happy with कि हर महीने मेरे पास एक check आ रहा है and that's it. जब तक check आ रहा है मेरे पास job है. You're wrong. In the post-COVID era, this is the worst way to survive. This is not how you survive in a global crisis. You think about the future. And so stop living by the checks. Apart from doing what you're doing, always have a side gig. Always have that kind of a side gig, and build your credibility, build your portfolio. This will fetch you work. Always be choosy about the kind of work you're doing, because your kind of work will define your professional credibility in the future. So be very choosy about your work. So on the last note, I just want to conclude with saying that there's a very important thing that you all need to believe. I don't think I would have done and survived these last 2 months without two things: belief in my own work and belief in God. I'm a very strong believer that God has His own plan, and all of these things. I don't know how many of you are atheists in this webinar. I don't really know, but if I offend you, I'm sorry. But I believe strongly that God has a plan. I have always believed in His plan, and if you're sincere, if you do hard work, if you're willing to do something unique and unusual, God will support you. God is always there by your side. And so I think I would not be anything without the God that I believe in, and I believe in Jesus Christ. So I want to tell you that um, you know I don't think any one person can do great miracles or anything unless you have belief in God. So keep believing in yourself and keep believing in God. And that's all I got for you. If you have any questions, I'm ready to take. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think that was a really interesting session. I mean, last time when you came to our college, I didn't get the opportunity to listen to you fully. So I think this
Yeah,
made that up.
great.
Few
I'm glad.
things. I mean, while you were talking, all those who have any questions, they can write it in the comment section. We'll display it on the screen. And Seema has noted down some questions which were asked during you were saying this. So she'll
Okay.
read out those questions. Some
Okay.
points which I think you said, like crisis leads to journalism, is a very good point. I think I mean, the examples you gave were really heart touching and something the students or the aspiring journalists should learn. One more thing which I really like, the thing is that, and this is to all the students of the institute, we have a channel, and like ma'am said, we can use this opportunity to take out that journalist inside you. And
Yes,
you can record your videos, you can record what is happening around you, any good thing, any bad thing, whatever which you want to bring in notice and to all the people, and we can put that on our channel. I think that's a very good idea, ma'am. I mean, I'll work on it with the students.
that's great.
uh,
I'll be curious to see that.
thank you, ma'am. Okay, so Seema, you can ask the questions.
Ma'am, first question is why is level of journalism is decreasing nowadays?
Why the level of journalism is increasing nowadays?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. I think it's inevitable that the level of journalism will decrease because we are living in an information age. Information is being uh, churned out every second. So there'll be some kind of a churning, and I think this period, this particular level, is a period of churning. There'll be all kinds of information, authentic, inauthentic, good, bad, and I am of a very strong belief that this will suddenly, anything that gets better gets worse first. So this is a period where all the information is being churned out, and I'm pretty sure because the examples that I gave you, I have a lot of hope that good level of journalism will rise eventually, because everybody now knows that if we have now in the पहले WhatsApp पे जो भी आता था हम यकीन कर लेते थे. So WhatsApp was called a university. Now we know better. Now we know now. Even my parents are now cross checking the news. They don't believe everything that WhatsApp tells them. So this is a period where there's a war between right, wrong, true, untrue, and I'm very sure that this decrease in the journalism will eventually, it will lead to the increase in the level of journalism. So the reason why it is decreasing is because there's so much information and we can't help it. But I'm pretty sure that there'll be laws, there'll be standards, and our world will learn to better take digital information. I'm pretty sure about that.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, second question was is new media is under propaganda?
Not just new media, all kinds of media is under propaganda. So it's again, don't blame it on the new media. It's everywhere, everywhere. Every media is under propaganda.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, third question was what is good journalism in today's context?
Good journalism is you tell the story in the the way it happened. That's good journalism.
Okay, ma'am. Now, next question was how, as a viewer, someone will differentiate between fake news and authentic news.
Huh. Always in case of fake news, this is a very good question. Whoever asked this, thank you. Thank you for asking that question. One of the best ways to distinguish between fake news and authentic news is always cross-check with various resources and apply a lot of common sense into it. Okay, I'll give you a small example. I'll give you a small example of this. I'm sure this will help you understand what I mean. There was a very weird statement by Mr. Amit Shah, and it was somewhere in the news, and it says that COVID-19 के time हमने 1 लाख क्या 1 करोड़ रुपए 1 करोड़ लोगों के बैंक अकाउंट में डाल दिए. And this was actually used as a marketing pivot on Twitter. And अब थोड़ा सा कॉमन सेंस आप लगाओ 1 करोड़ लोगों के बैंक अकाउंट में 1 करोड़ रुपए डालें, मीनिंग every person got 1 rupees in his bank account. So you have to first cross-check with various resources and apply some common sense. God gave you common sense. Just use that. So that's, and as journalists, all the more you should use that. So yeah.
Shri, is there any other question?
Yes, actually, there's a power cut in my house, so it got a little disturbed. I'll just display the questions. There are many questions actually. I'll just start displaying it from the starting. Um, um, Ma'am, can you see the question?
Yes, many times YouTuber Dhruv Rathi got exposed, and how can he be a journalist? He's just a YouTuber. Yes, I agree. Again, if you're looking at my all my examples, Dhruv Rathi and all of those things. As for exposure, let's also understand all of these names that I took today. They have all made mistakes, right? Every journalist has made mistakes. Every entrepreneur has made mistakes. Every advertiser had made mistakes. Every minister, every prime minister had made mistakes. Same as with presidents. All of us made mistakes. What we need to understand is you may follow Dhruv Rathi for all the analysis that he gives you, but the day you feel that okay, he aired, you should be able to call out to Dhruv Rathi and say that this is wrong. I saw somewhere else. So you should follow the information and authenticity more than people. If you keep following people, you'll be disappointed at some point. So raise your standards. People will disappoint you. Mukti will go wrong at some day. But what Mukti said, how to do those things, if you follow those, that will take you farther. So same as with Dhruv Rathi. Of course, he's been exposed. I'm aware of all of those things, and but he was just a good example of how in-depth news analysis can look like. And of course, he will fault at some point. कहीं ना कहीं वो गलती करेगा. सब लोग करेंगे. So it will be inevitable.
Ma'am, I'll add the next question.
Good question. Yes, it's become very, very, very difficult. In fact, non-writers have come into the freelancing work, which has made the world very crowded. Okay, but here's what I want to tell you. I'm old in the sense that in the profession, I've been in the freelancing profession for 10 years now. I read new writers and I feel they are better. And someday these writers are going to kill me because they are better. They have better source of information. They know better. They have learned from better people. They are pass outs of foreign universities. So I will lose jobs. I want to tell you, yes, if you think freelancing has become a very difficult task, I want to tell you everything has become a very difficult task. The idea is if you have talent and if you are sincere, you can survive this. My question is, do you have that talent? Are you willing to do the hard work? So don't call the freelancing to be tough. Make yourself tough for the task. So yeah.
Next.
Yes. The way that you can practice is take a short-term course in screenplay writing. I don't know if you have, but if you want to become a television or cinema writer, then start from a basic course in screenplay writing. पहले screenplay writing सीखो. स्क्रीन पे राइटिंग सीखने के बाद take a story and write screenplay and then submit to media houses. Today, I can tell you, OTT platforms are looking for good screenplays. They are very ready to give you a break even if you're a good writer. If your screenplay is good, they will select you. So first learn that craft and then start building portfolio and submit. You can do that. It's easy. It's easy. Good question. Yes, they have lost their jobs and they are very much part of media. But I think the world is now learning how to accommodate these people into the media because see, COVID-19 is new for the whole world. It is new for everybody. So yes, they are part of media. They've definitely lost jobs, and I mean nobody can do anything about it. But I'm sure there'll be allied professions that will come out of this kind of an unemployment. So yes, they are part of the media. They have lost jobs. Not denying that. How newer journalism is competing with mainstream journalism, Dr. Vikas? I think I already answered that question. New age journalism is the way it is competing with mainstream is because new age journalism is now spearheaded by individuals with authenticity. New age journalism is not dependent on a platform, and so it is easily able to compete with mainstream journalism. So yes, that's how it's different and competing. As it's the era of new age journalism, so can we say that trusting citizen journalists is more better than trusting most of the mainstream? I don't want to say this is one is better than the other. Everybody, as I said, we are human beings, we make mistakes. What makes you think citizen journalists will not make mistakes? So I'm saying use your common sense and choose according to context. Don't say that this citizen journalist will always be right. He'll be wrong on some day. He's a human being. So I don't want to say one is better than the other. I think explore everything and then use your common sense to compare. How much internship with a big media organization is important for making a career in journalism? To some extent, it helps. But I'm telling you, there are so many people from Balaji, alt Balaji, who have lost jobs and they were interns. So there are good and bad sides of both. So yeah, it may help, it may not help.
Okay, then there are two, three more questions, and I think they have been said in the video. One is that is the state news channel better than the local one? I think you talked about it right now a
Yeah,
few moments
yeah, yeah.
earlier. And there is one which says that is this a time to show conspiracy against China? Is this what this just came? So it was.
I would say, to be honest with you, I'm not an expert, so I can't comment on that because Abhi, then I'll be dubbed as a conspiracy theorist that, okay, I blamed it on the China. So I don't know. I wish I knew. I want to know this question myself. So I don't know everything.
Okay. Okay, so, ma'am, there are many comments. I think you should read them after the video is over. They have
Okay.
really enjoyed the session a lot. So thank you so much for speaking on it. And ma'am, Dharma, I would request you to throw some light on the webinar.
Actually, in the beginning, I think you have not introduced Madam to the audience. So,
Yes, ma'am. That part got skipped.
Okay, so why
so
were you listening to me, everybody?
They're already a fan of yours. I mean, when they knew, I mean, after they heard you for the first
Yes,
time,
ma'am.
they were
no,
really like,
there are
yes,
students who have heard her earlier also, but there are some people who are not
From
from our
other institutes.
yes.
who are here.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Seema, I would request you to give the introduction of ma'am's introduction.
Okay.
सीमा पूरा प्रेशर तुम्हारे ऊपर है. The world is watching.
So, actually, she had already prepared her introduction, but then that
Okay,
part got.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That's good. Okay.
So, thank you all of you for joining us today. It's my honor and privilege to introducing Ms. Mukti Masi as our guest speaker for webinar organized by Shri Vaishnav Institute of Journalism and Mass Communication. Ms. Mukti Masi is a well-known content writer and listed among top 10 content writers of India. She is a co-founder of a video content production company, AVM Pictures, and she has 14 years of experience in content writing, and she has written around 4,000 social media posts, 200 video scripts, and around 12,000 blog posts. She had also worked with Times of India, Indore, and Free Press as a sub-editor. Thank you, ma'am, for enlightening us.
Thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction.
It was a really nice interaction. I know last time when you had come, that time also students had liked a lot. That time I
Yep.
could not hear you, but this time I have heard you. It was really nice. So
Thank you,
we,
ma'am.
in near future also, we see that you will come to our institute and
Ma'am.
motivate our students why to go for journalism.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm glad to think so.
Okay.
I would love to come again.
So Supriya,
Yes, ma'am.
you-
Good evening, all. Guest speaker Ms. Mukti Masir, content writer, co-founder AVM Pictures, respected Dr. Upinder Dhar sir, our Honorable Vice Chancellor SVVV, respected Dr. Santosh Dhar ma'am, Dean FDSR SVVV, webinar moderator Ms. Shivli De Sarkar ma'am, faculty colleagues, participants from different colleges, and my dear students. I feel immense pleasure to extend my gratitude on behalf of Shri Vaishnav Institute of Journalism and Mass Communication to all those who have been directly or indirectly associated with the webinar. First of all, I would like to thank our guest speaker, Ms. Mukti Masi, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and making this webinar successful.
Thank you.
I would like to extend my thanks to Dr. Upinder Dhar sir, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, for his guidance. I am also thankful to Dr. Santosh Dhar ma'am for her constant support for conducting this webinar. I am thankful to moderator Ms. Shivli De Sarkar ma'am for conducting the seminar and coordinating with us. I'm thankful to all my colleagues and participants for making this webinar successful. Thank you all.
Thank you, Shivli. Thank you for managing so well, Shivli. Technically, it was all perfect. So kudos.
I was just sitting cross fingers that it goes well. And all the participants, I would like to just say one thing. You'll have to mail back just mail us on this email ID of the channel so that we can send you the feedback forms. So only the people who fill in the feedback form will get the e-certificate. So all those who are listening and have been, continuously in the video, please just mail us on this mail ID of the channel. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.